So what's up, everybody? It's the dawn of van life here with
Novel Kulture.
How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great.
We're doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I got a free apartment for like a month, so.
Or is it like one bedroom?
Yeah, it's just like a little one bedroom thing, and there's like a shared like toilet on the floor, bathroom, not just the toilet, the whole bathroom stuff with the shower and everything. And there's like 4 little units on the floor. I don't think all 4 are occupied though, but I honestly don't know. And basically, when all the jobs got canceled at Oregon Shakespeare Festival, they still let us stay because they're not really using the housing for anything. Since no new workers are coming in, and like I guess I'm assuming they don't really have a use for it, and they have to pay for it anyway if they want to have a festival in the future. So it worked out in a weird way, even though I don't have a job now.
Yay. Being in a shelter is more than enough, right? I'm loving being in a shelter versus being in a van at this time. It's just like not something I want to do at the moment.
Yeah. And you know how much a little 1-bedroom costs in the Bay anyway.
Like 1,200 with rooms.
Yeah. They'll curtain off like a section of the living room for you.
Yeah, van all the way.
I really
All right. So for anybody which I don't think that many people will be in that position, but for anybody who's not familiar with your channel, which I would be shocked to find out, what type of van were you living in before you got the heck out of San Francisco?
Well, I mean, our van is still outside.
Yeah.
But it's a 2012 Nissan NV 2500 low top.
Right.
Unfortunately, but fortunately, it's a mixed bag. It is pain and pleasure, but it's a reliable vehicle. It's gotten us since we bought it in 2015. We've driven almost 60,000 miles on it.
Mm-hmm.
And reliability to me is really important. Like my minivan's outside. And it did have an issue coming up here, but it was an issue I knew was coming anyway. So it was more my fault than anything. I kind of should have taken care of it before I left California. But otherwise, I mean, like it's normal stuff. It's stuff I expect at its age and its mileage. So it's honestly been a super reliable machine. It'd be lovely to stand up, obviously. But sometimes you just got to be grateful for the pieces that you have, you know?
We were supposed to go in some direction closer to standing, but the ROI just wasn't in there, especially after we graduate. We're moving out of it, so it just too much money.
And you're especially tall, so it's probably like really hard on you being in a low roof van.
Yeah, I mean, my lower back is not hurting me as much, since we've been out of it. With insulation, it's like 5'2" in there. Not 5'2", 52 inches in the tongue. For me, I'm 74.5 inches, so
that's a lot of inches.
Right. 90-degree angle, bending over.
Well, one thing I noticed, and I don't know how you guys have felt about it, like one thing I do like about sort of being in the apartment is I actually like just time standing up where most people wouldn't stand up. Like I was talking about this with Carly the other day. We were talking about how we stood up and like ate in the kitchen just because like there was this standing space. And so there's so much that personally in my van that I do like from the bed. Like the bed becomes like this all-purpose space where it's like where you sit to work on your computer, it's where you sit to eat, and you're always sitting. And there's so little space. Like, so what has that been like physically transitioning into like apartment life from like a low top van, especially as 2 people in a van?
Well, I mean, it's not exactly too much different in terms of comfort. I mean, well, it is definitely different in terms of comfort, but utility in terms of using spaces. Of course, there's a kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a table where one can work, and there's a bed with which one can sleep. So that's you know, that's great in an RV. In order for it to be, what is it, registered as an RV or converted to RV, you gotta have a place to use the bathroom, a place to sleep, place to eat, and then sink running water. So it's
So
kind of like,
a lot of times I get questions about parking in San Francisco, but I honestly spend most of my time over in Berkeley. So as far as you guys' experiences, since you were legitimately in San Francisco, like on a day-to-day basis, how hard did you find it? You know, how much was it problematic? How much was it just figuring out San Francisco and like sort of sorting it out? Like, what was that experience like?
um, so when we first moved here, we went to an orientation. Actually, we was coming here. We went, if you remember the video from the Nevada Highway Patrol video, that was actually the day before our first day in San Francisco. And we had to park somewhere. We were going to Post Street building for the orientation.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking for parking, and man, we were sadly mistaken. That was our first time, technically living there. I mean, we first got there, we had to replace our windshield, but the next day we went out and we were sorely smacked in the face by the amount of difficulty it was finding parking. Then when we did find a spot, because we didn't know the colors yet, um, greens, yellows, the grays. We ran up on one spot. We got into the spot and we were broke. When I tell you, when we first got to San Francisco, we had no cash. So the quarters that we had to pay for parking were the last quarters we had.
Yeah.
When we put that quarter in that machine, and it took our quarter. So, we just skipped the orientation because there was nothing we could do. We just, rushed for no reason. And then on a day-to-day basis, it is definitely difficult, but being there for 3 years, we're able to navigate that a little bit better. We have systems in place. We don't have to depend on our feet so much or our bicycle, which we've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4 bicycles due to parking far away and having to commute into town. But once we matured, we were able to weasel into certain spots. Our van is 21 inches by 7 feet tall, so that really gives us the sweet spot. We have the most space that we could possibly have in order to fit in most parking spots in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm. And for the most part, we try to find locations where there's all-day parking versus paying for parking, because paying for parking could be almost paying for storage space where you can stay, or basically you could be living in an apartment. So we try to find the free parking spaces for the most part. It may be further out, but that's fine as long as we saving a buck.
Yeah, but also our transportation. If you are living in San Francisco or your van in San Francisco, a big consideration is, like she said, all-day parking. Now there's some on the outskirts of the city, but if you plan on going into the city, you've got to have some reliable transportation. A scooter, a bicycle, whatever it is, it's got to be reliable. You got to treat it like an investment, maintain it, and then utilize it so that you get that return on investment. And we went through folding bikes, electric bikes, mountain bikes. They all broke on us. Yeah, so that's a big concern.
Say I did that a lot because I started working for are you familiar with Children's Creativity Museum? It's down in San Francisco where the carousel is. There's a giant carousel, and there's like your garden, the gardens. And when I worked there, what I did most of the time was I parked where I could park all day, and then I just walked to work from there, and then I walked back to my van. Because trying to park, unless it was a Sunday, trying to park like near my actual job, like it would have cost too much, so it wasn't like worth it at all. So I did a lot of that parking and walking, but especially in big cities, I can see it's really useful to have like a secondary vehicle, a bike, or like a scooter or something like that, because it really allows you to make that decision to like, okay, I'm parking where it's most financially feasible, which may not be right outside the door, but I have a way to travel a little faster than walking if need be. So yeah, I think that's a really useful tool, especially in like larger cities when you're doing a lot of stealth parking. That was just me co-signing.
When we first moved that first day, remember we missed the orientation, right?
Yeah.
So we went to park at Ocean Beach, on Fulton at the end, because we were like, well, we're sure that we could park in this area. If we go and park somewhere else and we end up getting tickets, it's gonna hurt real bad. Because we have money. So we had no money for Uber or Lyft, and we ended up walking 7 miles to school and back on the first day of school. And that was very humbling. It was a beautiful walk. This is like the first day in San Francisco. You're really walking all the, you're seeing all the features here, but it's still a 7-hour walk.
Yeah.
So we needed to do something, and really learning which neighborhood. It's kind of like trial by fire. You gotta, see what works. There are some resources that tell you when it's okay to park there. I forget the name, but I'll have to give it to you so that you can put it in the description.
Yeah, because hopefully Children's Creativity Museum, once they're up and, I mean, right now, obviously they're closed because children and COVID-19, but hopefully at some point they'll be opening back up and need me. I mean, like I was officially laid off, but I also hadn't worked there. I was an on-call worker. I did like house managing. So I was basically there to manage the space while companies were using it. But hopefully when they're running back again, I'll start getting calls again. But yeah, that was when I mostly parked in San Francisco. So like, as far as like issues in San Francisco with parking, because California has a really bad rap, but San Francisco is like the worst according to most people. So as far as like, how often did you deal with like, you can't park here, you can't sleep here, any kind of knocks?
So we got a couple stories, but I'm gonna let pass. So
yeah, so San Francisco is a very wealthy area. Certain parts are really wealthy, and the part that we decided to stay in, we were staying in a really wealthy area because San Francisco is currently going through epidemic with break-ins, and we didn't want to get broken in while we were asleep. Like, we didn't have the safety measures in place. And once we got the safety measures in place, we now venture out and park other places. But then we were parking in a really wealthy area, and cop got called on us because it said that we was in the same like area too much. So we eventually moved from that area and found different areas.
Yeah, the cop was just saying too many calls. So I'm guessing there was no calls. And that standard protocol for vans is somebody calls with money. So he sent us away. I was doing some homework up front. So that's one of the things you gotta learn. Go straight to the back.
Right.
Straight to the back.
Yeah. In the front.
Yeah. Straight to the back. Yeah. But any other get out of here? Not really. Any get out of here?
Any get out of here? No, we got a few break-ins that basically told us to get out of there.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Some areas, you can be sleeping in there until it breaks the window. Some areas you can be going to work and come back, your window smashed out. And that's happened just going to school or going to work and back. It's happened a couple times. Inside the van, that's happened in the middle of the night, and then just other various reasons can break the window. So have that contingency for comprehensive.
Right. And insurance is very important.
Yeah. And smash and grab is just, I mean, it's just prevalent in San Francisco. Unfortunately, when I was in my car, I had a window smashed. I've never had it happen in the van, thankfully. And I think it's harder when you're because you guys are in a cargo van. So people are like, oh, there might be tools, there might be expensive stuff. And one of the few advantages to being in a tiny minivan is they just think it's like a soccer mom van, like 90% of the time. So maybe that helps me a little bit. Have you guys, as far as like just the van not being bothered, have you ever thought about doing the whole like disguise it as a construction van thing, like reflective vests or anything like that, or are you just like that's too much?
I think I think it would help. I think if I mean honestly, people aren't stupid, right? If you are working out with flip flops, and a towel over your shoulder, people are gonna sense that. If you are walking out with a vest and you're carrying yourself as if you're commercial, then it could work, for sure. But sometimes, if you oversleep, for example, then you're gonna be getting to the front and you're gonna have to slide up to the front. Steering wheel lock's gonna be on. And other things is, it's just from my perspective, it's gonna be like, what was you doing back there? But there are people that are paying attention, and many people are completely oblivious to people in their vans. So,
although we have not tried the construction side, we did try to disguise ourselves as a yoga company. We had this like whole, we put this whole template on, was it Vistaprint?
Vistaprint,
and it was like, what was it? On yoga. And we thought that would stop people from breaking in, but eventually we were like, you know what, this is kind of silly, so let's just take it out. Yeah.
Somebody calls the number. I didn't want it to be a fake number, because let's say a police officer is like, I'm going to call this number, and if it's not the right number, we're saying, what's your number? Whose phone is this? And it's my phone. So I put my phone number in, and it was like, take it.
And so much legal work into that. Like, we called so many numbers to try to figure out how can we run a business inside of our van in certain locations. And it was a whole mess. If you wanted to do that, like have a business inside of your van. So yeah, we looked into it, but no, it didn't go far.
It was just no, mostly because because of the minivan thing. But I did talk to I talked to another guy who said like he didn't like put an actual business on there, but what he did was he put like a vest on the front seat. He put like reflective like tape on the back bumper, just these things that say, a construction guy might own this van type of thing. And he said it did reduce his knocks. He didn't live in San Francisco though, but he said he had gotten a couple of knocks, and by doing that, it reduced his knocks. So, I always wonder, people with cargo vans, how much they experimented with playing with that.
This inspired me to go get one of those reflective vests and put it on the seat, because I've seen it, and you can tell when the construction guy also lives in there. You're like, that guy lives in there, You can tell. I guess I could tell, being living in a van, just certain things about it. Maybe a van, like you making a killing there. Thing. Construction, go home to a van. Thing.
Yeah, I was actually working. I don't know if I'm allowed to say where I was working, because this is when I was doing stage crew stuff. It was for a big tech company down in San Francisco, and they had somebody deliver something, and they had like one of those standing height sprinters, and I just thought it actually was just like a construction thing. And then when we went to like pick the thing up with the get the boxes out, there was a curtain, and he had like 5 feet of space in the back that he used to do like these deliveries. And then you could see he had like a desk and a bed in the area beyond the curtain space. So he had finished out part of it and was using the back to make money as a delivery driver for like certain sized items for special orders.
That sounds good. If you had the space, you gotta have extra space.
Yeah. And it was just him, so, and it looked like a really simple setup, but he looked like he had all the stuff. Like he had a bed, he had like a little desk area, he had like a little kitchen setup. I was peeking, I was trying to see how, because I was like, wait, there's more than there's more than the cargo van in there. He also had like a panel on top of his van when he drove in, but I honestly think less people notice that than people notice that. They're like, oh, that makes it obvious. But to a lot of like people just passing on the street, it's just like a little thin piece of metal slightly raised up, and 90% of people don't pay that any attention. So you guys, you were still in school when the COVID-19 thing started, right?
Yes.
So are you guys still like taking classes online?
She just got out of class. As soon as you texted her, she just was getting out of class, and I was working on some homework. So yeah, we're still in session.
Right. We just got, instead of on-site classes, basically online, and they're there watching us. Like we all put, Zoom, their
Yes.
faces there, so it's the same. It's amazing, but I don't know if I could do online classes like that all the time. I don't think so.
Especially not for arts. Like anything in the arts is really hard to do, not doing it. Do you know if they're already planning like more online class? Because I know some colleges are planning more online classes next semester. Have they planned ahead for that, or is it just about like getting through like what's left of this semester?
They're still saying basically they don't know yet, but we will be told ahead of time. That's what at least my counselor is saying right now. And we are trying to figure that out right now because, the Black Nomad Meet is coming up in August. So we don't want to take 2 cross-country trips. That's just expensive. So it's basically up in the air at the moment. They said they're just feeding us whenever they get information.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the original Black Nomad Meet was supposed to be on the 14th. Of June. So that would have been perfect for us whether or not we went to school or in San Francisco anyway. And then we're online, but we still don't know if school is going to be in on site. So we're going to have to go back to San Francisco. We're going to stay here. That's a big, big thing that they should probably let us know if, we're required to go back to San Francisco. Because we definitely would like to go down to Georgia and do our police safety workshop at Black Women's Meet.
Are you coming to the Black Nomad Meet?
I am basically on pause until I see what the end of May is like. Because if I'm able to be employed in June or July, I would need to be in California because I already had that job scheduled. But it's hard to say what theater is going to be on the other side of this because obviously that involves people like gathering in large groups and people on stage doing a lot of touching and being near each other. So I really even can't make a call. I really feel like there's like a pause button and I just need to wait until May before I make any decisions, at least the last week of May. So yeah, that's honestly, my life's on pause until the end of May. Luckily I can stay here till the end of May. If there's anything I want to do to the van, obviously it's easier to work on the van when you're not living in it. Because like and I feel like you guys have gone through this too. Like it's you can work on the van while you're living in it, but it's like so hard because like you can only work during daylight hours. You have to make sure you're packed up enough to like, get back in the van before the sun goes down. So you're not only are you racing the sun to do the project, you're racing the sun to get yourself in a place to go to bed that night.
We said, you know what, we're going to do 2 more years because originally it was 2 years. And then we decided, okay, let's get our bachelor's, might as well, plus we could still, become debt free and all of this stuff. So we'll do 2 more years until we graduate. We couldn't live in those. We could, but it was very terrible in those first few bills that we had. So we said, this is gonna be the one, and it's going on a year working on this bill. So, scope, quality, cost, of time. Your project management got to make sure that your project is not going to draw out a whole year or plus a year. But it has been giving us the ability to be comfortable and at least get a little bit of work done. However difficult it still is being in the band to it. homework. But, yeah.
No. Van, all these different builds we've done. We're still working on a van. Can't wait till it's finished. This is probably one of our builds we've done so far.
And I'm saying that because we had a lot of stuff everywhere, and we would go to this one spot in San Leandro where the cops wouldn't come and bother us. There were other RV people and take out everything, pull out the skill saw, the circular saw, put our horses down and cut the wood and all of that and build the boxes. But we were there. Wake up, go there, work, come back, wake up, go there, work, and then make sure everything's back in there before it closes. Mm-hmm. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah. I always work in the Home Depot in Emeryville, and they've never stopped me. And literally, I've pulled out tables and been like, using the saw. And like, I've had people walk up and be like, "What are you doing?" and be curious. But honestly, if you ever want to go to the Home Depot in Emeryville, they have never stopped me. And I've seen other people like do like project work around their van. And also when I just want to clean it out, like just take everything out and wipe everything down. I've also gone there, and so far they haven't bothered me. So keep that in mind.
That's one by Target.
Right, yeah. There's like a Target, a Home Depot, some smaller businesses, and like I work there all the time. Like almost everything I've done that was like a big project, minus the time I was house sitting and I was able just to like use the lady's yard. I've done it in the Home Depot parking lot.
And Home Depot. We've had security guards come at some Home Depots to kick us out. But we've definitely done some Home Depot. We did the one Bayshore Home Depot in what is it? What's that? Cesar Chavez area in San Francisco, and then all across the country, different.
Yeah.
That's a Lowe's. Bayshore.
Oh yeah, it is a Lowe's.
Yeah. Same difference. Home Depot, Lowe's. They just got different colors. They got the same stuff.
Yeah, one time the security guard, it was closing, and we had the guy came up in his mini car with his yellow lights. It's like, y'all know what time it is? It's closed. We're like, throw everything in there, go to another location, move it all so where we can sleep.
So you can
go to sleep. Right.
What would you say is like the hardest, like as far as the work you've ever had to do on the van, like what would you say was the hardest thing, project that you've ever done? And you can say what you're working on now or like something you've done in the past.
I would say either the propane system, the electrical system, or the bed, because we had to rebuild that bed 1, 2, 3, 4 times. We replaced the mattress one time too, so we reused that mattress for 3 of the girls. So the electrical system is still not done. We got some help at the Vanlife Chat meetup. Got some great help with the attaching the switch, but I still haven't attached the switch. I still haven't attached the fuse box. I still haven't attached the cutoffs. And in terms of moving everything, the bed is a big portion of the van. So since we decided on it being solid and having different storage bins inside.
Oh no, you telling the whole thing.
Storage bins inside. There's boxes,
You give away our secret compartment.
There's boxes everywhere, right? You got 9 foot by 4 foot panels that you got to cut and prearrange, and just sitting there and then chipping away as you build new components. So we started off with just stuff in the bed until we could even put the bed there. It was just a challenge.
Yeah.
We slept on the floor of that van many nights with a slit in building equipment all the way, Paris and I like this. Wake up and then have to climb up, and it was a mess. But you know, feel good to get it done.
Right.
You made it work. Well, one time there are times where I'm just sad I don't have a second person because there's just stuff where I'm like a second person would be useful. And I'm trying to like rig it up myself because I know like I want to get it done. And people sometimes come through too for you and sometimes they don't. But my friend Emily, she came and helped me on the bed that I'm now demolishing. It's not because of what she did. I did a horrible job on the legs. And so like that, the bed is actually one of my big projects that I want to change out before I go back to California, before I wrap up here at Oregon. I mean, because it's like, it's such a main part of the van. Like, I feel like everything gets built around the idea of what you want your bed to be in the van.
Mm-hmm. I know all the measurements. It's like they're burnt in my head. The space that I had, the mattress is 54 inches wide. I had to cut 4 inches off the side, and it gave 14.5 inches of counter space along 6 feet of the van and the sliding door. I know how long the van is, and all those things are just burnt in there. How many times? Oh, I messed up this cut. Gotta use this cut, or I gotta go get a whole nother piece of wood and cut it. It's the legs that have fallen apart on us is ridiculous. We tried drilling big old pieces of big old screws into 2x4s. That turned out to be too heavy and then immobile. And then it fell apart because of using it's a van, so it's shaking around everywhere.
So as you can see, I don't do much building.
Yeah, he's like that all the
time. I just sit back and watch, help when I can. Here you go, here's the tools.
Here's a piece of wood.
Yeah, I'm that second person you was talking about. Here you are.
Where you want me to hold it?
Yeah.
Have you heard of this new, I don't know if it's an app or a program, it's like called Van Space. And it's supposed to help with designing vans.
Sorry.
Yeah, I only know about it because one of the bus channels I watch, she's using it they are moving from a bus to a van, and she's using it to design the van. So yeah, I don't know if your van is on there, but Van Space is available if you think it would be useful.
Is it like dimensions and stuff like that, or is it like different van lifers on this platform?
No, it's for designing a van. It's like instead of like house construction, it's like you can take different elements and drag and drop it into the van, and they have different you can say I have this type of van, and that van will be in the van space for you to like add little elements to. Like if you put a counter here and it's this dimension, and the bed here and it's this dimension, and all that other stuff, and it should work itself out. But I don't know what van models, because they have the models already in the van, and I don't know what van models are in there. Is it just like, is it all sprinters, or if you have like a different kind of like cargo van, are those in there? Like, I don't know. I think they're getting a Ford Transit, so I'm assuming like it has most cargo van dimensions in there. So yeah, but it's out there, and apparently people are using it to design their vans. I'm pretty sure minivans aren't in there.
Yeah, we tried SketchUp at first, but let me tell you, it was a learning curve. It was like learning a computer-aided design program. It's just time-consuming. You gotta watch a YouTube video for everything.
Right. I think that took most of our time of us building, because I was like, well, this is too much. Like, we can't. We need to just go ahead and get a pencil and paper, and we just need to go ahead and it out, because it's taking too much time. So
I went to a Home Depot. I was in Maryland at a Home Depot. There was these busted up drywall panels that nobody's gonna buy. They were like 8 feet by 4 feet, and I just with a pencil drew like all the pieces of wood I needed. There was this old guy who was helping me out. I was able to draw out each piece of wood for each counter, each shelf, each bed piece. And I ended up using like 3 or 4 pieces of drywall to get all the pieces of wood out. And then bought the wood to go cut it.
Oh, that's smart.
That was some people, they whip some beautiful design mock-up of the van, and then the camera shows a transition to the actual real van. It's like, wow. I wish I went to school for being an engineer.
I mean, it does look cool on camera, but if you don't have like those skills, it's like it's a huge learning curve to get that cool looking 3D design that you can sort of play with. I had a designer for a show that used SketchUp, and all I had to do was read it, so it was fine. Like I didn't have to design anything. So I couldn't imagine like the learning curve. Even though I have used like CAD software before, it's still it's a lot, especially if you're doing something like really, really precise and you're trying to like figure all that stuff out. So what would you say like has changed the most for you from when you started van life to now?
That's a good question. What has changed?
Being able to cook. Like the evolution of the electrical system started off with a car starter battery and a 100 or 150 watt modified silent inverter. So once we knew that it wasn't safe to have that, we were able to get one solar battery, and we went to Harbor Freight and picked up 2,000 watt modified silent inverter. Those two things without solar panels and the battery isolator ran us for most of our time. Then we got solar panels, and those got blown off. Then we just went with, because they were expensive early in van life. They were like almost $200 a piece. Now they're $100, which is great. But just in that 3-year period, the price went down. And then we were pushing it with the isolator, and then we got a second battery with this new system that we started building last June, and then 2 solar panels and that original isolator. So that's been holding us pretty well. We've been running our 12-volt refrigerator. We're able to charge up our laptops, and then with the addition of propane, we're able to cook without burdening the electrical system. So I would say just the basic electricity and cooking food have been the biggest changes on the utility side of van life.
But we could cook before then.
Yeah, without the inverter, you're not supposed to draw those batteries below 50%. Not even close. And as soon as the 1,200 watt an hour pan thing, what kind of meal can you cook? Like that's it,
Yeah.
With one battery, you're killing it every day. And we had George Foreman's. We had those. We even had hot plates at a time, and our system just, wasn't able to handle it. So a lot of times we wouldn't even pull it out. We wouldn't even use it. It would gather dust in the depths of the van somewhere. So propane really allowed us to, without thinking, go in there, make fire, put a pan on it.
That's it right there. The propane system has been awesome. Like Lavelle said, the system used to beep all the time when we would cook. So sometimes it was just like, why am I going to use the system when it just keeps beeping? I'm not going to be able to get through all my food. So after we got this propane system, no problem with food at all. Amazing. And we have a refrigerator now. I love that. It's amazing.
Yeah, I just got a fridge recently, and it was like, I love having a fridge again. Like even dumb stuff like having cereal and milk in the morning. Like you can do it in a cooler, but you're dealing with ice and like the possibility it can go bad. And there's just so like just being able to like store milk and then just pour milk. Like that was like the best. But also gas cooking is just the way to go unless you can afford a really, really expensive system. And, gas cooking is just a way to go. Like a vent and a gas cooker is way better than trying to do electric cooking in a van. And I know some people think like solar is a cure-all, and it's like you only have so much solar and so much battery, you know. They're like, you have solar.
Yeah,
You
we
can...
actually we dang, oh man, I forgot what I was gonna say. We well, mm, mm, dang, she said. So you said that the dumb stuff like cereal. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's where I was going. Yeah, yeah. That refrigerator. You can lunch meat. We used to have a cooler that we just inherited from having an apartment. And just having a cooler, and we didn't put anything in there. It would start stinking. Everything you buy would get wet, you know, and then you had to pour it out and add more. So it just that wasn't. We did that probably 2 times. Went to go get ice.
Probably
One. It's like
Yeah.
no, never doing it again. Uh, and then so we just went 3 years without a refrigerator almost. And it's better now because money is not so better. It's like, okay, let me go get this delicious food in this place since I can't make it for myself. So I guess it's that independence.
Yeah. And I feel like if I make something and I have leftovers, like I feel like I can store it and then like heat it up so much easier with the fridge. And it's like, yeah, in theory, I could have done that with the cooler too, but like there's so many more tasks involved with the cooler when you're dealing with basically blocks of ice that are melting, and at some point you have to, it's just a task at a certain point. And I feel like there are a lot more affordable fridges now. Like I feel like it used to be the Domestics, which were like super expensive, and that was like what everybody went to. But I'm seeing a lot of people have success with like the cheaper refrigerators now, which is good.
That's what worried me because Paris would tell you I was pushing refrigerator since real close to the beginning. I was looking at one. It was the Alpicool C15. It was 13 inches off the ground. This one you could slid it right under the bed. It would have caused problems, but I still wanted a refrigerator. So, you know, once we got it, the Alpicools, it was just like, do I trust this brand? Is it nice? And it was significantly more affordable than the Domestics and the AR. I think it's ARG, and they're just like, who has $1,000 to put on a refrigerator
for fridge space?
Who has that? And the stuff associated with van life is just decreased in cost, and the barrier to entry is significantly easier. The channels that are teaching you how to do it the right way and all of this, so it's definitely more accessible to just say, oh, I want a fridge and get one because it's a couple $100 instead of a couple $1,000.
All right. Speaking of barriers to entry, so we've had COVID-19, especially, it's not a good time just to be randomly parking. Gyms are closed. And there are some people who like do dispersed camping who are out in the middle of nowhere, obviously, but even still, at some point you have to come back and you have to deal with stores. What do you feel like it's going to look like on the other side of COVID-19 once we start opening the world back up? Do you think, as far as people who are planning to go into van life, people who are interested in it, do you think people are going to be more pulled back because of how much van life requires you to interact with the public? Or do you think people will be so sick of being stuck in that there'll be this big surge towards van life? Like, how do you think people are going to react on the other side?
Yeah, I haven't looked at the metrics for van life as a keyword, van life as just a topic that people are searching. So I would that after this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look to see, is van life increasing in search volume? Because if so, then that means people are going to act when they have the chance to. A lot of our viewers and subscribers are like, on the edge of deciding whether or not they want to move to a van. And this may be a motivate, lack of funds. But I mean, if you are saving for this time, I would say the most ideal person who is saving for this, already and can go ahead and do it without the troubles of being like in some places you gotta have tickets saying where you're going, or else you might get fined and stuff like that. But in a few months, if you're prepared to go into it, I think people are going to pull that trigger because why? I mean, I don't know when would be a best time for them to do it. Uh, I mean, of course, we say if you're seeking, you're increasing your financial intelligence, you're seeking financial independence, you want to build your business or whatever you want to do, then you got to cut those expenses. And if your expenses are a couple $1,000s a month, but that money could be reallocated somewhere to scale your businesses, change the situation that you're in at that time.
So. Yeah, and like you said, if money do become the issue, because I'm not a statistician, but looking at how things are going with unemployment, people are, losing their homes, people aren't paying rent. I think just based off the information, I'm not even just off the information about the news, but looking at the percentage of unemployment there are, like homes are going to be a huge stress. So I think it is going to become, van life will become more of a safe haven for not living on the streets. Just off of that, that's what I think.
And this is for people who are this message is for people who are coming up on maybe they're about to be foreclosed on. And for example, we want to move into Georgia after we get our van life. Foreclosures, tax sales, tax foreclosures have been postponed for the next 3 months. So even if we, that's great, that people are being foreclosed on and evicted. But where are they going to go? So I think van life, people are going to be pushed into their whatever car they have first, because like yourself, you went from a car to a van, and other people went from a smaller car to a van. So people are going to be real intimate with this alternative life. For us, it was taking this situation and putting a smile on our face and making it a positive situation. So I think, and it's very humbling, and it really allows you to, time just goes by quick, and you can see the growth, especially in the band, because you had a hand in changing that situation. Everybody wasn't, I mean, I would like to think everybody's meant to just be silver spoon and make any decision they want to make, but humans since the beginning of time had to go out and do for themselves, most of the time. So I think van life is one of those things, especially if you're there by yourself or with a companion, that it's very character building, very maturing as well. And then you can really see what direction you want to go.
And I do think van life teaches you to be so inventive, because there's so many ways, and this has come up in other videos, where we're using technology the hard way, but it's more instructive, if that makes any sense. Because like when you're in a house and you plug things in, you don't think about how many watts. You don't think about how many watts it's using. You're like, plug in my heater, it works. And then suddenly when you're in the van and like you try to use like an electric heater and you're like, oh, I'm killing my battery. It makes you start thinking about, that whole thing in a way that's completely different. And I think it is an educational experience, even if ultimately, which a lot of people do, you end up moving back into standard housing. And I think that's a valuable part of the experience, and to a certain extent, I chose to transition from a car to a van because I was like, in the long term, the money saving of being in the van as opposed to trying to get an apartment I don't know that I'm going to be able to pay for, 2-3 months down the line, is more valuable. And it allowed me to make choices in my career that I could not have made if all I was worried about was paying a rent that was above what I was making.
So I have a question. I mean,
yes. Go ahead.
That was a good question. So if tomorrow you come up with an opportunity, and it's a nice opportunity, and you had the opportunity to I said opportunity times to move into a sticks and bricks full time. Would you think about ways that you can stay in your van, or would you just use your van as a car, as your commute tool, and then do the house? Like you never know, you could be picked up for a series, or you could be end up in a different financial situation. Would you think about kicking the van to the curb and going and fixing it, or
I mean, like, my thing is right now is like with what I'm trying to pursue, so much of my life is like contract to contract. Like, even if I was going to do a whole like a whole theater season in one location and it paid well, I don't know what's going to happen at the like my job just doesn't exist in a world where you have the same job in the same place all the time. Even if you work in the same state, you're going to be changing like companies, or if you're lucky the company rehires you, but you never know that. And because I come from a world of such insecurity, it would take a lot for me to feel like now is the time I can commit to like being in a house. Now, mind you, you can get out of a house, you can get out of an apartment, you can always move out of a thing you move into. But right now, like if I got more money, my first thought would be a better van, not a house. I don't know if that answers your question. Like, I'm not obsessed with the idea of a house. I'm obsessed with the idea of betterment. And right now I see van life as a path to betterment more so than having standard housing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We considered, we went to Ocean Beach once, and with a stick, we drew out the layout of our shuttle bus. we were getting a shuttle bus.
Yeah.
Doing that thing. We literally got the measurements. We went out there, was like, I want my shower here, I want my bed here. And then it was like, would this do for us?
Right.
And I guess you have to look at getting a house or an apartment the same way that many times we see a for rent sign. We're about to go to the back, but we see a for rent sign on the San Francisco apartment right across the street. And we might have considered, calling that number or going online to see what's available. Man, first off, San Francisco is too expensive to just think that you're gonna get an apartment. That's just not how it works. And then, what's the mission? We already had this van. We incur more costs. It's going to work against the whole mission. So, yeah, that's good to hear. That you're down for van life because of van life, not because just people do van life for many different reasons. But
yeah.
So a lot of times on the low income side is because there's nowhere else to go. And then it goes up to there's nowhere else to go. But I also like van life and what it stands for. And then it can just, as you progress and grow, because van life inevitably will grow, these new situations come up, new considerations. So, yeah.
So when do you foresee yourself getting out of van life?
I mean, like right now, I don't really have a get out of van life plan. I don't think. I have a moving forward plan, which is on pause because I'm waiting to see what happens in June. What has affected me since COVID-19 is, unfortunately, I'm in an industry that's entirely handicapped by the inability of people to interact. So what it has made me think about is like, what else can I build for myself so that I'm not completely broken if work goes away. And like, that's something I've been thinking about heavily. Like, what is it that I do that I can do to build income streams for myself. I mean, I was really impressed when I saw you guys were thinking about doing the vending machine thing, because that was something I'd considered. Like, it was in my little idea book at one point, because it seemed like something that had a low barrier to entry, and was completely doable. I haven't really fully investigated, I'm going to be honest, but because I've been trying to figure out money stuff just in general. But it's like, you know, that's sort of a bigger deal to me. Like, what sort of, because my fear with getting into an apartment or house is, even if you have the money at that moment, like, if your situation changes a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, whatever, which is what's happened to me before, is like, I was in an apartment, and this is the time I was legitimately homeless for a couple months before I got back into standard housing, and the job I had went away for unfortunate reasons. And so suddenly I couldn't afford rent and my SUV at the time. And so I decided I was going to keep my SUV and figure it out. And I don't ever want to be in that position again where I feel forced into the vehicle. And I know as long as I have a vehicle, I can work. And so it gives me sort of a sense of security in a way right now to be in van life. And I would have to feel like I could have the house and my income is under my control to some extent. Obviously, anything can happen in life. But I would have to feel very, very, very comfortable with the amount of income to maintain it over a reasonable amount of time before I made such a change. And I would always, because I do enjoy, it's not that I don't enjoy like travel and like, I've seen so much more living in a van than I ever would have if I tied myself down the rent. Like, I went up to Canada for a day because I felt like it. You know, I had time off work to do it. And those moments are like awesome. You know, when I got the job in Oregon, it wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't like, oh, how am I going to handle like paying rent or renting out my apartment while I'm away for work for 2 months? Or do I have to pay rent for a place that I'm not in? Like, I didn't have to make any of those decisions. It was like, okay, drive my house to Oregon. And then I had free housing while I got here, while I worked. And then under normal circumstances, I would have just got back in my van at the end of that and, you know, went back to San Francisco, well, the Bay Area, where I would have continued to do the things I was doing before I left. So right now it gives me a sense of security and control. And also it feeds those moments of adventure I want to have. So right now I'm not like, oh, in 2 years, I want this over. In 3 years, I want this over. My plans are more about financial security in the coming years than getting out of the van. Like, it's not really something I really like focus on. I feel like if there is a time to stop living in a van, that time will make itself clear to me on its own. That was a lot of rambling. I don't know if that answered.
Yeah, when you move, one of the things that you generally do is see how much apartments cost and stuff. When we moved from LA, we didn't even look up one single apartment. So we didn't even know that there was a gentrification problem. We didn't know that, apartment, just rent prices and the cost of living was sky high. So when we got there, it was like, oh, after it just started revealing itself to us, we're like, oh, it's just like the grass is it's green on the other side, but there's some brown patches in there, so just every city has its own situation. And then Oakland, we hadn't been to Oakland, so we didn't even, West Oakland, we're just like, there, boom. Here, this is where you live. So yeah, van life has really allowed you to move without having to think about, how much money you're gonna lose or how much money it's gonna cost you to live.
Yeah. And even if like you do the thing where you have an apartment and you rent it out, like, you don't know who's in there. I mean, it can work for some people, especially if they can have like a property manager or someone like they know they can trust. But like, even the idea of like, okay, I'm not going to be in my apartment for like 2 months. You're going to have stuff in the apartment. Like, you're not going to empty the whole thing out. So you have to have somebody in there you trust with your stuff, and who's not going to mess up your place. And there's all these sort of factors that play into it. Or just not finding anybody and finding yourself tied down to a place that you can't be for a certain amount of time. And people figure it out, and it's not a bad thing, but like for me, definitely it's not something I would want to personally like deal with right now. And like the van just works for now. Like, it's not perfect. Like, I'm not gonna pretend like it's sunshine and daisies to like, it's a cold day, you can't go out, you don't want to be out. And when you're stuck in a van, it can suck because like everything's from the bed. You have to be sitting down. You can't really get up and walk around. And like, if you're stuck for some reason overnight, you have to be like super quiet. Like, going back to cooking, that's been interesting about being in the apartment. It's like, yeah, I have the gas cooker. I just have one of those little like, propane butane stoves, and I have the fridge and everything. But if I get off of work late and I go back to the van, I need to park and be as quiet as possible. And if I want to eat, it's like a sandwich or something where I don't have to like crack windows and like all that. And it's like being able to come back to an apartment space. If I want to cook a 3-course meal, in the all the pans, like
take the shirt off.
Yeah, like those freedoms are really nice when it comes to things like the apartment. If I want to shower, I just open the door and go to the, into the shower. Like, I don't be like, all right, time to go to Planet Fitness. Is this just a workout day or just a shower? Like, you don't have to travel to get to these things. Like, laundry is right downstairs. I don't have to pay for it. So like those things are nice, but also the cost of those things, if I weren't getting them for free, just aren't worth the trade-off, basically. And that's just like my reality I live in. And it's like, I'm okay with that. And the way that I've used it for personal growth. And so I don't feel trapped by it. Cause it's like, if I really, really, really was like, I hate this, I could go get a desk job. Not right now, because ain't no jobs, but like under normal circumstances, I could go get a desk job. Just be like, I'd rather have a secure life with a desk job and, use that security before COVID-19 to have all the things that make us quote unquote acceptable to society. Or I can choose to pursue the thing I actually want to do.
Yes.
And I think that's more important. I mean, I love my mom. She passed away a few years back, but she was literally miserable every day of her working life. She had the security. She worked for the state, but she was miserable. And honestly, after her children were raised, she didn't know what to do with herself because she didn't have anything like she was personally passionate about besides getting her kids raised, And once that was done, I really think like there was something lost in her. As wonderful a mom as she was a wonderful woman who sacrificed all kinds of things to make sure everybody else was okay. But also like seeing the sadness of not having that personal joy is a big motivator for me. Ramble.
No. I like hearing about you. I didn't know all that. It's great to hear that.
Love my mom. She was a good woman, but her whole life was like, okay, I'm gonna, get a job that pays the bills and like, have these things, and they didn't make her happy at the end. So, so
is there a daily mantra that you live by to keep you going in the van? Or is van life just like, I know it could be some rough patches, but is there anything that keeps you going in van life?
I mean, I think it was just that. It's just honestly, I am not miserable. There are things that are annoying, but it's like there's nothing like miserable about my life. And I think like people seeing it from the outside are like, how can you not be more frustrated by the fact that you're in a minivan and like you have a tiny little fridge. I didn't used to have that. And, you know, I have limited electricity, so I can't run anything I want. I basically have 200 amp hour AGM batteries and a 100-watt solar panel. So on a good day, I can get my batteries up to 100% most of the day. It's great because somebody was like, you only have one panel and 2 batteries. I was like, yes, because I don't like use all the energy I can in a day. And most days I want some rollover energy. Every once in a while, meh. And before that, you know, I started out like you guys. I had like a little 150-watt inverter that I plugged into like the, you know, the cigarette lighter port. I always use gas cooking. I went straight to like a camping stove and cracking my window open. You know, there was a time like the only thing I did was charge my phone overnight. You know, I would charge my power bank so that I could use that overnight to be able to charge my phone. My phone was all of my like entertainment. I had a Chromebook which didn't use a lot of power to charge, so that was great, and that took care of all of my internet needs. And I just started out really simple. So little things like getting a fridge is like upgrade, you know, figuring out how to do my own solar system, even though it's like super basic. Like all I did was hook up the fuse box at first, and I ran everything off the fuse box. I didn't even have an inverter hooked to it. I just recently added a 300-watt inverter, and that's as much as like I use, because I run the fridge straight off the fuse box. So, you know,
inverters have like it's like a 20% inefficiency.
Yeah.
So that's our plan is to do that, but we still haven't got other people.
Electricity is the hard part.
I spent like months on Will Pro's videos. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Let me watch this again. I don't know.
All right. Okay. All right. Yeah, you like video after video. Okay, this is this. So this is. I'm just like.
It's like I'm following you. I'm following you. You lost me.
Hold on. What? What? Wait, let me see. Click the eye to see if there's any, you know, any videos that kind of explain. You know, they put like a info card in there. You can see more videos. Yeah.
There's a reason that kid has so much money, because that kid, he has like money now.
I would hire him. Yeah. Because I mean, but when you have an RV, it's a whole different ballgame. So
yeah, I still don't understand how because like I get positives and negatives and kind of what you hook to what, but like if I had an RV, like my intimidation would be how, because the RV already has like a house electrical system, it just needs power from an external source. So I'm not even quite sure how all the hooking up works once an RV is involved. But I'm sure once it's hooked up, it's easier, because like when you build a van, if you want like, you know, plugs in your van, you have to install the plug and wire all of that back. Whereas if you can figure it out in an RV, once you wire to the RV system, like all that stuff is already there. But I find most RV layouts ugly. Like I don't like most of the layouts, at least for the smaller ones. The big ones that I wouldn't get anyway. But the smaller ones, I'm like, I don't like where the bed is. Why is that table there? I would rather have floor.
Like the Class Bs.
Yeah.
We thought we considered the Class Bs, and it's like it's gonna cost this much to buy this, and then it wasn't built to last, you know. So might as well just get a van and try to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's always the debate, isn't it? Because like I could have something already built, but I may not like the layout, and I could build it myself, but then I have to teach myself how to do all the things to have the things, you know. But that's the way it goes. So I do have a wrap-up question, and it's, if you had one piece of advice you wanted to give somebody who was thinking about going into van life, like what, and I want to answer from each of you separately, your one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who was thinking about going into van life.
Go ahead.
No, you got it.
The advice that I would give to someone who wants to step into van life is set a goal to how long you want to do van life and really have a strong why on why you want to do van life. For me, van life was not something I ever wanted to do. I always imagine myself, in the hills in Hollywood, living next to the Kardashians. But, that takes time, that takes hard work. And, when we fell on hard times, I was like, I don't want to do van life. No. I've never seen someone live in their van because they wanted to, or just basically because they wanted to. I always saw like, that person is homeless. That person don't have a life. You know what I mean? So I got into it. I saw all the possibilities and all these nice vans, but I always made sure I stayed true to my why. And my why was I want to be financially stable. I want us to be financially stable. I want to have the finances and I want to be able to manage my money right to not have to live in this situation again. And if I choose to again, I choose to again. But, that why is really important because you drop out of it really quick. Only thought I was going to do 3 months and end up doing 3 years. So that why is really, really important.
Mine is going to be specifically on, finance. Paris was talking about why. If you got to, the number one thing, of course, if you're trying to change the situation better, a lot of people kind of blame financial ignorance on, commercialism, materialism, and just being set in your ways to plunder your check, and of course, skipping that assets column and going straight into liabilities or expenses, and then your money goes, and now you're boohooing because you can't eat or whatever. You're not paying yourself first. So I would recommend getting into some books. Get into some books, and not you can read your fantasies or science fiction books. Get into some financing books and really get into.
I feel judged. I'm joking.
I mean, because if you're serious about making a drastic lifestyle change, the emotion needs to be taken on because you have emotional investors, emotional people with money, and you're not applying any quantitative information. So you need to get a budget. You need to know how much your expenses are. You need to figure out how much money you're going to need if the coronavirus comes and you're going to be knocked out for 6 months. How much money you're going to need to survive? If you're in a van, it's great on it. It costs less, but if you don't have money, you still ain't going to eat. That's the case. So you never know. It's I put van life in like this proper survivalist circle. A lot of us aren't. We're like we can go there if we want to, but we're not. But nonetheless, you have these freedoms, you have these abilities to move around, and you should definitely leverage your lifestyle and some financial education to do whatever you want. But the whole purpose is to do whatever you want. I want to do whatever I want, so I'm going to move in a van. Well, there's a van part, but also a personal finance part. So budget, plan. I mean, it's easier said than done.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll just give you some good resources to, taking the steps to become financially independent, financially intelligent, so that you can pursue and achieve financial independence, generational wealth, or whatever you want to do with your business or lifestyle.
Yeah. And I like those whys, actually. Those are really good, especially like the having a purpose, because I think a lot of times van life gets painted as, oh, it's cheaper. And it's like, it is cheaper in theory. Like if you own your van, yes, it's cheaper to like live in a van you own and not pay rent. But a lot of people, because their focus is, oh, van life by default is cheaper, they get an expensive van that they can't afford, that they put on credit cards, and now they've increased their debt before they're even in the van, and they're still paying on the van. And that's not saying you can't have a van payment. I only got a van because I was able to do a van payment, but it was reasonable to the expense I could take on while still focusing on the goal I had, which was debt reduction. So I think those like whys are important. And it's like, why is cheaper important to you? Do you want to travel cheaper? Do you want to cheapen your lifestyle so that you can afford to live in a city that you otherwise wouldn't be able to afford? And being very clear about those whys, I think are very important, because those are two very different whys. Like, you guys are in school. I have a career in theater, which, jerked me out of the state all of a sudden. And if somebody's goal is about travel, and that is the goal, it may be, I want to be able to do van life for a year and travel and not have obligations. So that may mean they save up for a year, focus on building up to that point, have that year they can spend untied, and then be able to go back to their regular life. But if they weren't clear on their why, they're just like, I want to travel for free and I'm going to start a YouTube channel, which doesn't need default mean you're going to make any money. And YouTube is a bad boss, because they will reduce your salary and you won't know why. You're like, I'm making the same amount of videos. Why is my ad revenue down?
Let me tell you, we say we traveled the country after we moved out of the apartment. Many times we pull up to a gas station, $1 in an account, and swipe that card at the gas station, and it allowed us to fill the whole account. And we did that 5 or 6 times, and if not, we would have been stranded. So, this is important. We would have been stranded in some middle of nowhere town with no money. And we didn't want to ask family for money. We didn't want to ask that, parents or anything. But we were able to get across the country and back, $1,800 cash, but a lot of bucks swiped on that card. Some gas stations allow you to do that with one. So sometimes we hit one and it didn't work, and we went to the one across the street and it didn't work. And we were able to go 300 more miles down the road. So it was irresponsible, great experience, but that budget, just go open up a Google Sheets and type budget, and then put your expenses there. That's how it starts. You look back now, it's like some crazy, after 3 years, it's like some, charts and stuff. But before, it was like food, gas, just the basics. And it really does grow on that. So.
Yeah. I actually do have a spreadsheet. That's like all of my basic expenses. And I was like, this is how much I need to make to be able to give a decent payment to all my credit cards and pay all my necessary bills, which is like the van insurance, blah, 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 blah. That in my phone, that kind of stuff. And then like, I make sure that amount gets set aside, and then everything over that is for fun stuff. And sometimes the fun stuff is, I get to eat this month. I'm not really going to be moving around too much, and sometimes it's like, oh, I can afford a little piece of camera equipment. Great. Recently I bought myself one of those little stabilizers. It was like $80. I'm like, it's my new toy. It's a cell phone stabilizer. Yeah. I'm like, I can move my hand all around and the image won't be jerky. But it was like, I had to feel secure in a place where I could buy that. And that budget really helped a lot, because you're living in a van, but the van costs money. The van's gonna like need mechanical repairs and maintenance. The van's gonna need gas. You still need to eat. Like, all of these things cost money. So yes, you've cut out rent, or mortgage, which is a major expense for a lot of people. But there's still all these things that cost money, and do you have a reasonable way to handle those expenses that are still going to exist and still able to be working towards whatever goal is a part of your van life journey, rather that's travel or just reduction of cost of living or whatever the heck it is. But that clarity of vision, I really agree with you guys, is very, very important. And I've always appreciated you guys focus on finances. And just generally, like, I'm impressed with you guys. And let's be honest, there aren't that many couples that look like you.
Right. They come footwork, so it's awesome to see them.
Yeah, it's
our soul agenda, the Adventure Island meditation. Well, then you get into the ones with kids. That's even broader. But yeah, it's crazy.
But it's good to see like representation of yourself. So, this is also an avenue that you can use to get to, whatever path you want to get to. I think that's all I have for you guys. You guys have anything for me before I wrap this up?
I did want to know, what do you think about the stimulus checks?
My question is, am I going to get one? That's my only question. Because like, honestly, if I get it, I want to put my emergency fund away because that's my stage 1 plan. We already talked about this off. But my stage 1 plan is $1,000 in savings, more aggressive attack of my credit card debt, and then moving towards investments or, building an assets column. That's my 3 stages. So the first stage is I wanted to complete my savings account so that I was able to move into the second stage, because right now I'm stuck at stage 1. Excuse me, so gross. And use it to move into stage 2. So that's what I would do with that. But I'm unclear on how a lot of this is working. I did do my taxes recently. I know some people have already gotten stimulus checks. I am at the point of I'm not going to spend money until I see it. Like I have a vague idea, but I'm also like trying to, because we're in such an emergency position, I'm at the point of planning my life around the money I have and the money I know is going to be there. Because right now it's this invisible thing that might happen with no exact date. So I feel not motivated to plan on it until it's like physically there, if that makes any sense.
I'm just hoping that, that this don't affect next year's tax income, taxes. That's what I really am, We've seen some things that said it could affect like next year's income taxes, and I'm just like, what is the real meaning behind this money? Like, I don't want to pay nobody back. Like, don't give me something I got to pay you back,
Yeah, I'll let you save it. I'll get it next year. And I know some people don't actually want it for that reason, because they don't want it to end up affecting next year's tax return. But also because I have qualified for self-employment for a number of years, and it's forced me to learn how to like track my expenses. I've been focusing more and more on having money put away anyway. Just because I was poor as a joke and had to owe the government for like 2 years because I didn't properly track my expenses, and I got in self-employment income, and so I got hit with the self-employment tax. So like I'm like po. I'm like super po. I'm not even poor. I'm po. And here I am owing the government money for taxes because I qualified as self-employed through like gig apps like Uber and Winolo. Wrong side. Winolo.
What you wearing? I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, it's a gig economy app called Winolo. I actually modeled for them. I got paid to model.
You gotta check it out. Gig economy app.
It's a good way to just get odd jobs. Like I've done a lot of weird little odd jobs with them, and there's even like a delivery company that if I desperately needed to, I could probably log on and get like some food delivery stuff back in San Francisco. But yeah, that's all I got. All right. Thank you guys for coming on the chat. Be safe through this COVID-19 situation. And I look forward. I can't even find words. Look forward to further updates from Novel Kulture.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.
Yeah, have a great time in that place.
Peace out, y'all.
Adios.